we're going to Greece. Yay! Super excited. Today and tomorrow there's some light wind sailing to be had, so we're off. It's 5 AM. Really looking forward to this passage. We left Crotone at sunrise. It was a magical start to our 24-hour passage to Greece. Little did we know, our engine would nearly blow up that night.
On the sheet.
We love setting up the wind vane to steer Skua. It makes us feel like we're more involved in the sailing and we're truly moving with the power of the wind only. It's an incredible feeling.
But you don't want anything new. You just get behind the universe. Now it's a different today, and we just don't know.
We've got some amazing sailing conditions going on. We've got 15 knots on the beam, which is perfect on this boat. We've got all 3 sails up, so proper cutter rig. And the sea has mellowed out a bit now, we're over deeper water, and it's about aligned with what it should be for 15 knots of wind on the beam. So it's pretty comfy. Feels like the first time in ages that we've had some nice sailing weather. And it should stay for a bit, and then probably die a little bit and turn more on the quarter rather than on the beam. So we'll hopefully later have some good cruising shoot conditions, but we'll see how it pans out.
But you know, there's valleys and stuff.
We jibed the cruising chute, which we did by just easing the sheet all the way out. We could have snuffed it, but I wanted to see what it was like by easing. What you do is you ease the sheet all the way out, and then the cruising chute just kind of flaps downwind, and then the sheet is long enough that you just walk it around the boat to the other winch and then just winch it in. It worked alright, but it's a bit of a faff, so I think in the future we'll just snuff it and then unsnuff it on the new side. I think that is probably easier. But because we turned to point more down wave, our speed went from 3.5 to 5 knots, because before we were on a very broad reach, but the waves were right on the beam, which was slowing the boat down a bit because it makes the mast move around and then it depowers the sail. So we're making a lot better progress in the right direction now, which is quite nice.
This is so cool. This is what I remember light wind sailing to be like. Just gliding off the waves with a big cruising chute and feeling super comfy, doing a great speed and just staring at a beautiful sail. We just had a bit of a hectic cruising chute drop. It went really well, but out of the blue we had 15-16 knots of wind, and that is at the very edge of our comfort zone with the cruising chute. We didn't want to have it up in any more than 15 knots, so we just had to sort of like dash and get it down really fast. But it went okay. We just used the sock and then got the Yankee out, and then we turned into the wind, raised the main as well, and now we're back on our course. As the sun set over the horizon, we settled in for what we thought was going to be an easy night sail.
Just starting my first night watch. We haven't really been running formal watches all day because we had the cruising chute up and then conditions were a bit variable, so we were both kind of like doing all the sailing all day really. But now we've reefed down for the night, we're settled in, the sea's calming down nicely, which is really nice. It's so much nicer at night if everything's a bit calm and the person on the off watch can get some actual sleep. I've got the hydrovane working, seems. It was struggling a bit earlier because I think the boat was being thrown around a bit too much in the bouncy Mediterranean swell, but now it seems pretty happy, which is nice because I don't really want to use electricity all night, and also the hydrovane's quieter, so it's a bit more pleasant. Hopefully the wind will remain. It wasn't really forecast to be this windy. It's not like crazy windy, it's really good sailing conditions actually. Really like perfect wind speeds, especially now. The sea is really like aligned to it. It feels like a bit of a rarity this spring in the Med for the swell and the wind to be aligned. They've always been really confused, but hopefully this is the start of the settled summer weather, and it's supposed to be 28 degrees next week, so summer's arrived.
I was on my night watch and the alarm for the engine went off, and as soon as I noticed it, maybe within 5 seconds, I turned the engine into neutral and ran down below to wake Ryan up, and it was the temperature gauge, and it seems we've lost all our coolant.
Let's try.
So Ryan filled the engine back up with coolant, and it's still way too hot, so because I was on watch, I said, why don't you go have a nap for half an hour while it cools down, and then we'll try starting it in a bit, see how it behaves. Yeah, hopefully I reacted fast enough for it not to have ruined our engine. It was bad luck, it was a hose that broke, probably an old one, and that's how the coolant escaped. And I'm not very good at explaining this sort of technical stuff, like I have no idea what I'm talking about basically. I'm just being completely honest, but I want Ryan to have a nap, so I'm not gonna get him in front of the camera to explain it. Yeah, at least. So I started the engine and it was running for about 20 minutes, and it was because we were doing less than 2 knots. And at 2 knots the boat isn't very manoeuvrable with one person and 3 sails, and there's ferries going from Italy to Greece and all sorts of traffic that I'm expecting. And yeah, I just decided to motor for a little bit, and then it's really funny because when the alarm of the engine temperature went off, I had set the sails back into position, and I was motor sailing, and I was ready to basically turn the engine off, and that's when it happened. So the irony of it, oh well, at least it happened in calm seas. And Ryan was really nice about it. I said, oh, I'll give you an hour back to your watch and whatnot, and he was like, yeah, no worries. He wasn't too grumpy waking up in the middle of the night.
It's dropped the engine temperature. Oil pressure's good, temperature's good.
So the engine seems to be running alright. So relieved. So Ryan just cut off the end of the hose and reattached it, and yeah, filled in the coolant, filled the engine with coolant, and then we let it rest, and now it seems to be running alright. We didn't really engage it because we don't need to. We'll obviously keep an eye on it, but we think it will be alright. And in the meantime, a nice breeze has built up, so I've got all 3 sails out. The main is still reefed up to reef 2, and then yeah, we got the staysail out while Ryan was up, and it's a bit of a handful, to be honest. Like earlier I had to drop 2 sails and get the main in, and like in the dark on your own, it's a bit much if there's someone on AIS, and you might be on a collision course, but hopefully it's alright. I haven't seen any ships lately. Someone's just passed us and they didn't come anywhere near, and we're doing 4.5 to 5 knots, which is really nice progress. And at least we can throw it away properly.
What about chucking it in the fridge?
No.
Joking. It must have been out a while.
Yeah. Well, we got our butts kicked big time. We couldn't make our course for Corfu town where we wanted to clear in. It was 27 knots on the nose.
Yeah, coming directly from Corfu town to our boat.
Yeah, just for us.
Yeah, no one else was in any wind.
Yeah, so change of plan. We basically did a 180, didn't we?
Yeah, and it's really nice going this way. We were beating into it, and we were getting not really much closer with the staysail, and it was a really steep chop. So the boat was just like splash, splash, and then it was doing 2.5 knots in not really the right direction. And then we turned around, and now we're doing 4.5 knots downwind, and it's delicious.
And we've got like, all we have is the main double reefed.
Yeah, 2 reefs in the main, and we're just slowly cruising downwind. It's amazing. And we're going to go to this other place.
Yeah, so we're going to Igoumenitsa, which is like one of the main ports of entry into Greece, along with Patra. And it's a really big harbour, and there should be an anchorage inside the actual harbour, which should be very well protected from this northwesterly.
Now that we're anchored and everything's calmed down from the passage, I thought I'd try to explain what happened with the engine from my perspective. I was asleep on my off watch, and Eleanor woke me up suddenly saying there's the alarm for the oil for the engine's going off. So I was like, oh god. Jumped up out of bed, ran up into the cockpit. I could smell that like something was off, like it felt really hot even just down below, like it wouldn't normally feel that hot with the engine on, and something smelled strange. So I told her to turn the engine off straight away. So she did that. Thankfully Eleanor reacted really quickly. So I checked the engine oil to make sure that there was some in there, and there was, it was fine. And then we looked at the engine panel and realised that it wasn't the oil light, it was the temperature light.
Yeah, I was panicked when that happened, so I got really confused.
When she said it was the engine oil, I immediately thought that like the engine was probably about to seize, because if an engine loses its oil, then god, you're probably going to lose the engine. But yeah, once we realised it was the temperature, I was still pretty nervous, because I've heard that if engines get hot enough they can like warp, and then the cylinder head won't fit onto the engine block. So that was in the back of my mind. I was kind of reassured by the fact that there was still oil in the engine, but yeah, I was pretty nervous. And then I've realised what the problem was, because at first I thought that maybe we'd sucked up like a plastic bag into the engine cooling water intake, the raw water intake, So I went down into the bottom of the lazarette to check that, and straight away realised that it wasn't that. It was a hose which is next to it, which had come off, and that's the hose which comes from the engine fresh water into the heater for the hot water for the taps. So that had come off and drained all of the engine coolant water. So when I managed to get the lid off the heat exchanger, I realised that it was bone dry. Everything was also very, very hot. I poured water in, and as I was pouring it in, it was like hissing and boiling and evaporating, yeah. So the engine was obviously very, very hot. But I poured it in, and then we let everything cool down. I wasn't sure whether to start the engine and then circulate that colder water to try and cool everything down, or to just like leave it and then let it cool down naturally. We just let it cool down naturally. And then after half an hour of letting it cool, I went back to bed for another nap, and then we started the engine and it ran fine. The temperature wasn't high, so that was like a huge relief. But yeah, I still wanted to obviously keep a very, very close eye on it. But this afternoon we'd been running the engine, and the temperature had been staying down in like the kind of range that you'd normally expect. I'm going to check the cooling water level again probably tomorrow morning, just to make sure that it hasn't dropped as all the like hoses and stuff are filled up. But fingers crossed, touch wood, it seems fine. Yeah, so it was pretty scary though, especially because I'm not sure how we'd replace the engine if we lost it at the moment. We're kind of saving towards a contingency. We knew with this boat there'd be some bigger things which, like, if they went wrong it could like seriously ruin things. So the engine was the top of that list, and if we lost the engine, then yeah, I don't know how we'd figure that out. I guess we come up with something, maybe buy a second-hand engine or something.
An oar?
Yeah. Yeah, get some bigger muscles trying to row this boat around. But yeah, thankfully we didn't lose the engine, and so far it seems fine.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like or consider supporting our production on Patreon. Join us next time to explore more of Greece with us.